Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being in the audience. Thank you very much also to the people watching on the webcast and live on Periscope and Facebook Live. We're very excited to be here at COP22 in Marrakesh at the start of COP22. And I can't think of a better way to start our sessions in the SDG media zone than to have with us David Nabarro, who's the Special Advisor to the Secretary General on the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and Climate Change. And so without further ado, I'm going to pass on to David, who has to go shortly.
Thank you very much, Dan. Hello, everybody, and wonderful that you're here. This is an incredible moment in the work that we've been doing on climate, Dan, because less than a year ago, we were in Paris finalizing COP21, wondering when that agreement would actually come into force, but in record time, actually in just under 11 months, the COP21 agreement is now not only signed by countries, but ratified. And what this means is, that's it. Development now on is always going to be low carbon and focusing on resilience for countries and communities that are being affected by climate change. So now what matters is not only action, but ambition.
And do you see an urgency for implementation?
Well, of course, there really is. The climate issue is a ticking time bomb for so many millions of people around the world. We see it every day, the adverse weather events that are coming on. We see salination of fields because of sea level changes, and we see evidence of increased desertification. It is so urgent that we act, and we must act now. We must hit the target of inversion of the carbon release by 2020 so that we show that we're seriously in business. And it really does mean everybody working together for low carbon development futures.
Well, David, thank you very much. I know you have to chair a session on the other end of the blue zone, so we'll let you go right now so you can make your next meeting. But thank you very much for coming and being here.
And so to everybody, what I have noticed in the discussions I've already had in this COP22 is that there's a real spirit of we've got to get on and do it. Whatever the political environment that might be changing here and there, this climate focus is here to stay. Governments, civil society, businesses, local authorities are all convinced that they've got to work together to make this happen. And it's people like you, Dan, and the teams behind you and the people who are in the media who will maintain the total commitment of the world to make sure that we are ambitious with implementing the promises made in Paris last year. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thanks for coming. And so we're going to carry on for a bit. So the other person to my left that I'm joined by is another Dan Shepard. He's a communication advisor to the Secretary General's Climate Change Support Team. And Dan, we've been working together actually on this agenda for a while. Firstly, here at COP22, here in Marrakesh, what are you picking up from member states, from participants about the urgency for getting this Paris Agreement really implemented and out there? What's going on?
Well, thanks, Dan. Well, we've been picking up that the science is becoming much more certain, ever more certain. We've just had 2 reports from the World Meteorological Organization. One launched today that 2016 is on its way to being the hottest year on record. 5 of the last 5 years have been the hottest on record. We've heard many reports showing how the Earth is absorbing the heat regardless of the temperatures that are actually shown. The oceans have been absorbing. So the science has really been at the center of a lot of the COP, driving the COP. But we're also hearing that countries want to get on with the implementation. We're hearing that countries are integrating the policies that are needed to achieve the low-carbon green economy into whatever they're doing. And we're seeing some pretty remarkable things from countries all over the place, from North Africa and the Middle East to South America, Asia. You could see at the COP that people are innovating in remarkable ways and are taking things forward in all sorts of ways, that the green economy is the future, and it's closer than we think.
So Dan, you've been working at this for a while. I mean, how have you noticed this surge of momentum in recent months compared to some of the negotiations that have been happening for years before we got this far?
So the negotiations lumbered on for about 20 years, and then after countries adopted the Paris Agreement in December, we've seen this ratification process that's been tremendously rapid. We've had, at last count, we've had 109 countries ratify the agreement in less than 11 months after the agreement was adopted. That's just unheard of for any international agreement.
Why has it happened now? Why is it happening so fast?
I think countries see the importance of the Paris Agreement. They see that we have to get on with the implementation of the agreement. They see that we can't put this off, and you can't just go off on your own and do this. You need the cooperation of all countries on this. No country can solve climate change by themselves. Everybody's got to be in on it, and everybody's willing to be on it because they see that climate change is already affecting them.
And we know that certain governments are changing, in the coming months. How does it affect the whole process, this global process, when governments change and new leaders come in?
Well, the interesting thing is that the world is rolling now toward the green economy. It's already become the DNA of development, and yeah, things will happen along the way, but countries understand that climate change is happening. We've seen that not one country objected to the science of climate change in Paris. All the countries of the world agree that it's a problem, we need to do something, and they're doing something about it.
Terrific. Now we're sitting in front of this lovely, colourful display of the Sustainable Development Goals, the 17 goals agreed by member states in a year ago or so, just over a year ago. How does climate action fit in with this sustainable development agenda?
Well, in the first week of this COP, we've already had a focus on action areas, climate action, and we've seen how representatives from the forest sector, energy, industry, and business, and water, and transport, they've all been talking about what they're doing to reduce emissions and build resilience. And all of these things are sustainable development goals. We've also heard at this COP, we've had discussions on gender equality, we've had innovation, industry, and infrastructure. We've had discussions on sustainable consumption and production, and health, and all of these things are sustainable development goals. Climate action is sustainable development goal action.
These two areas have been on different tracks in some ways, the climate negotiations, the sustainable development discussions as well. Do you see those coming together at last?
Well, I think the actions are, because countries have to implement, whether it's SDGs or climate, they have to implement this at the national level. And countries, we see, are putting these things into their national action plans, their development plans, to address climate change and to achieve the sustainable development goals. Whether the processes continue on is almost a secondary question. It's how countries implement.
Right. Now we're going to throw this open to questions from the audience if people have questions in a minute. But before I do that, while you think of a question, let me just ask, what can come out of this COP? We're halfway through. It's the high-level week. The leaders are arriving already in the country to come to the high-level plenary that's tomorrow morning. The King of Morocco too will be hosting that session. What can come out of this particular COP, COP22?
Well, there are a number of things. First of all, this COP will feature the first meeting of the parties to the Paris Agreement. It'll be short, but it'll be symbolic to show that the world is moving forward on the agreement. The second thing is that countries are working on the rules for going forward, for implementing the agreement, and this is an important facet that we will need. Countries have known that the plans they submitted last year in the run-up to Paris are not sufficient for keeping the global average temperature to under 2 degrees, let alone 1.5. And so they know they're going to have to increase their ambition as we go forward. And there will be this moment in 2018 where countries have to ramp up their ambition. So we're on the road to that already. And we're also seeing commitments. We're seeing commitments from a lot of the sectors that contribute the most to greenhouse gas emissions. We've seen that the first week, and we're going to see some other big announcements in the second week going forward. We're also seeing the importance of climate change to Africa. We're going to have a lot of African leaders here in the next day or two, and there'll be a heavy, strong focus on Africa and what the world needs to do about climate change in Africa, and that will help also with the Sustainable Development Goals. So there's a lot of things going on here. There's issues of finance that will be addressed here, and there'll be a lot of other issues that are of concern to countries, but those are the major concerns.
Terrific, terrific. So, does anyone in the audience have a question that we can try and address? Yes, sir. That's a terrific question. You didn't have a microphone, so let me repeat that. The role of civil society in getting these goals implemented, and also the climate action that we need to see and was agreed in the Paris Agreement. How can civil society make a difference?
Well, civil society played a crucial role in getting both of the Paris Agreement and getting the Sustainable Development Goals. They've been involved at every step along the way. They made countries move in the direction of the Paris Agreement and the Sustainable Development Goals. Just before Marrakesh, the Secretary General met with leaders from civil society to thank them for their contribution to the Paris Agreement, because what they do is so essential. They raise the issues that countries will not acknowledge until somebody pushes them. So they have played a role, and we need them to continue to play the role. They have to be involved in the implementation to get things moving, and they are already. We're seeing it.
Terrific. Well, I think that's a great message to wrap up on. This is an issue that addresses all of us. We all live on this planet. We are all affected by rising temperatures and climate change. And so I think this is where the governments certainly come together to talk about implementation of the Paris Agreement, improving the situation that we find ourselves in, and the path that we find ourselves on. So Dan Shepard, advisor, communications advisor to the Secretary General's Climate Change Support Team. Thank you very much for joining us. David Nabarro was here earlier. This is wrapping up the first session here in the SDG Media Zone at COP22 in Marrakesh. We're absolutely delighted to be here. Thank you for having us, and we look forward to new conversations on this stage over the coming days.
Thanks a lot, Dan.